They thought I was a nobody, just some janitor not worth a second glance. They were dead wrong. In the gleaming hallways of a Chicago skyscraper, where tailored suits and oversized egos call the shots, I saw the truth no boardroom report could ever hide. My name's Ethan Carter, son of Robert Carter, CEO of a billion-dollar tech empire. But on that day, I didn't stroll into the office as the heir apparent. No suit, no business card, no deferential nods. I wore a blue jumpsuit, pushed a cleaning cart, and carried my mother's old watch, the only thing reminding me of the integrity she taught me. My dad wanted me to see the company for what it really was, not through spreadsheets or flattery, but from the ground up where no one's watching. I was ready for the grunt work, but I didn't expect to become a target for someone like Nathan Brooks, a senior manager with a fake smile and a knack for crushing anyone he deemed beneath him. On my first day, he zeroed in on me, not because I messed up, but because he thought I was someone who'd never fight back. What Nathan didn't know was that in the shadow of his insults, I was already taking notes. Every word, every smirk, every slight, I filed it away. And when the truth finally came out, he'd learn he picked the wrong guy to mess with. Stay with me, because this story of quiet revenge will leave you floored. I still remember the day I came back to Chicago after 3 years earning my master's in London. The city hit me with that bone-chilling Lake Michigan wind, cutting through the streets, leading to Willis Tower, where my dad's company, Carter Technologies, had its headquarters. I dreamed of the day I'd work side by side with him, not as his son, but as someone who'd earned his place. But Dad had other plans. Ethan, he said, his voice low but commanding, as we sat in his office one late evening. You can't lead from the top if you don't know what's happening at the bottom. You need to see the company from the ground up, where the real truth gets buried. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I was ready. He wanted me to go undercover as a janitor, working among people who had no clue who I was. They'll treat you like anyone else, he said, and you'll see what this company's really made of. I agreed, not just to please him, but because I wanted to prove I was worth it. My mom, who passed when I was a kid, used to say, integrity isn't something you brag about, it's what you do when no one's looking. Her old silver watch, scratched face and all, was the only thing I kept close when I started. I wore it every day, a reminder of her, of what I had to hold on to. My first day at Carter Technologies, I didn't walk through the main entrance reserved for execs. I slipped in through the back, where the custodial crew gathered. Blue jumpsuit, rubber gloves, and a cart full of cleaning supplies. That was me, Ethan Carter, the guy who'd graduated top of his class at a London business school. I didn't mind. I'd waited tables, washed dishes to pay for school. This gig didn't scare me. But I didn't expect that. Just a few hours in, I'd be in the crosshairs of a guy like Nathan Brooks. Nathan was a senior manager, head of finance. He had a razor-sharp smile, the kind of guy who knew how to make you feel 2 inches tall. I met him in the big conference room, during the monthly all-hands meeting. I was wiping down the whiteboard, trying to work fast and stay invisible. But Nathan had other ideas. Hey you, he called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm, loud enough for the whole room to hear. The other employees, seated around the conference table, turned to look. You're the new janitor, right? I stopped, meeting his gaze. Yes, sir, he smirked. Not the friendly kind. Good. Then hustle up. We've got important work here. And we don't need you slowing us down. A few people snickered. I felt heat creeping up my neck, but I kept my mouth shut and went back to wiping the board. I'd learned a long time ago that sometimes, silence is the best way to size someone up. But Nathan wasn't done. You know, he said, louder now, like he wanted the whole room in on it. I bet you're not used to this kind of work. You look like the type who'd ruin the floor, just because you don't know how to hold a mop right. The room erupted in laughter. Louder this time. I gripped the mop handle tighter. But I didn't bite, not because I was scared, but because I knew this wasn't the time. Let him think he's won, I told myself. He'll dig his own grave. After the meeting, Nathan kept at it. He called me into his office, a glass-walled corner suite with a view of the Chicago River, and handed me a ridiculous task: clean the entire 15th floor. Over 10,000 square feet, before my shift ended in 3 hours.
Raise.
This is your chance to prove yourself, he said, that fake smile plastered on his face. Or you gonna tell me you can't even handle scrubbing floor? I looked him dead in the eye. I'll get it done, sir. He laughed, like he'd just won a bet. Good. Don't let me down, kid. I left his office, pushing my cart down the hall. A fire of injustice burned in my chest, but I didn't let it flare. I touched my mom's watch, feeling the steady tick of the second hand. They think I don't notice, I thought. but I see everything. For the next few hours, I worked non-stop. The 15th floor was massive. Rows of cubicles, meeting rooms, a swanky lounge area, sweat soaked through my jumpsuit. But I didn't quit. I knew Nathan didn't care if the floor was spotless. He just wanted me to crash and burn, to feel small. But what he didn't know was that with every step, I was cataloging everything. His tone, his glances, the way other employees avoided his gaze. Halfway through my shift, I ran into David Lawson, another senior employee. David was different from Nathan. He had a quiet presence, the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen some things. He stopped when he saw me scrubbing the floor, panting from trying to meet Nathan's deadline. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low but genuine. I nodded, not wanting to say much, just doing my job. David studied me for a moment, like he was trying to read me. "Nathan gave you this, didn't he?" I didn't answer. But my look said enough. David shook his head. "That's how he is. Don't let him make you think you're less than you are."
Please.
His words caught me off guard. In a place where most people either stayed silent or laughed along with Nathan, David was the first to make me feel like not everyone was blind. But I didn't have time to dwell. I had a floor to finish, and a guy like Nathan waiting for me to fail. When my shift ended, I stood at the end of the hall, looking at the floor, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I'd done it, just barely. Nathan strolled by, glanced at the floor, then at me. "Not bad," he said, but there wasn't a hint of praise in his tone.
Oh.
"Next time, I want it faster. You're not here to waste my time." He walked off, leaving me with my cart and a cold resolve growing inside. I touched the watch, feeling the seconds tick by. He thinks I'm just a janitor, I thought. But he doesn't know. I've already started counting down his days. Those first few days as a janitor at Carter Technologies were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I was no stranger to pressure. Sleepless nights cramming for exams in London, grueling shifts, washing dishes in crowded restaurants, to pay my way. But standing there in a blue jumpsuit, pushing a cleaning cart through gleaming rows of cubicles, I felt invisible. Nobody looked me in the eye. Nobody stopped to say hello, except for the occasional half-hearted nod. And I knew that's exactly what my dad wanted me to see. The truth about people when they think no one important is watching. I didn't blame them. In a skyscraper like this, where everyone's caught up in meetings and emails, a janitor's not worth a second thought. But that didn't make it sting any less when Nathan Brooks singled me out like a predator circling prey. He didn't just want me to do my job. He wanted me to feel small, like I didn't belong here. And maybe in some quiet corner of my mind, I wondered if he was right. Did I really deserve a place in my dad's office? Or was I just a guy handed a shot, because my last name was Carter? I touched my mom's watch, feeling the steady tick of the second hand under its scratched glass face. My mother, the strongest woman I ever knew, taught me that a man's worth isn't tied to titles or bank accounts. "Work hard, Ethan," she'd say, back in our little kitchen in the Chicago suburbs, where she'd bake bread every weekend. "But never trade your integrity for applause." She passed away when I was 10, but her words still echoed, like the pulse of the watch she left me. My dad had his own philosophy. He built Carter Technologies from a small garage into a billion-dollar tech empire. But he never forgot where he came from. "Justice isn't something you demand," he told me, just before I started this gig. "It's something you deliver, with actions, with truth." That's why I was here, pushing a cart down endless hallways instead of sitting in boardrooms with execs. I wanted to prove I wasn't just Robert Carter's son. I wanted to prove I could stand tall, even when I was treated like the lowest guy in the room. But not everyone in Revenge with Ethan's style was like Nathan. In those early days I started noticing familiar faces. There were guys like David Lawson, a man with a quiet presence and sharp eyes, like he'd seen too much injustice in his time. David was a former Marine. I overheard some folks whispering in the break room. He'd served overseas, and now worked in operations, always professional but never kissing up. He was the only one who'd stopped to say a few kind words, even if it was just, "You're doing good work," after I cleaned a meeting room. Then there were others, the ones who laughed along with Nathan, the ones who avoided my gaze, and the ones who didn't even register I was there. I didn't judge them. I knew the pressure of a place like Carter Technologies, where everyone's scrambling for a promotion, for a pat on the back. But I also saw the rot creeping in. Whispers in the break room about Nathan taking care of the numbers. How he always dodged trouble, even though everyone knew he wasn't clean. I didn't have proof, not yet. But I had eyes, ears, and a cold determination growing inside me. One evening, after my shift, I sat in a small bar in the Loop, a few blocks from the office. The wind off the Chicago River carried that biting October chill. This bar was my go-to spot when I needed to think. Dim lights, the faint smell of beer, and soft jazz humming from an old speaker. I stared at my watch, thinking about Mom, about Dad, about myself. I wasn't here to get back at Nathan for his insults. I was here to uncover the truth, to protect my dad's legacy, and to make sure this company, the one he'd poured his sweat and heart into, didn't get tainted by guys like Nathan. But I knew I had to play it smart. Nathan wasn't some fool. He had allies, people willing to cover for him, and a reputation built on manipulation. If I was going to expose him, I needed more than a grudge. I needed evidence, numbers that didn't lie, emails that couldn't be denied, words caught on record, and I needed patience. They think I don't notice, I muttered, taking a sip of my beer. But I see it all, and I'm not letting them off the hook. I stood up, paid my tab, and stepped out into the Chicago night. The lights of Willis Tower twinkled in the distance, a reminder of where I was headed. The watch on my wrist kept ticking, each second a promise. I'd do the right thing, not because I was angry, but because I carried the values my mom and dad passed down: integrity, justice, and a steel will to make sure the truth, no matter how deep it's buried, would eventually see the light. The weeks that followed at Carter Technologies felt like walking a tightrope between patience and the slow-burning anger simmering inside me. Nathan Brooks didn't ease up after that first jab at me. If anything, he doubled down, as if humiliating me was his favorite pastime. But every time he flashed that smug smirk, every time he tossed out another insult, I just gripped my mom's watch tighter and reminded myself, he's digging his own grave. I just have to wait. He started with small, calculated acts of malice. One morning, as I was mopping the floor in the reception area near the cubicles, Nathan deliberately knocked over his coffee cup right in front of me. The black liquid splattered across the floor, inches from my shoes. He crossed his arms, staring at me with that fake smile of his. "Whoops, look at me, clumsy as hell," he said, his sarcastic tone ringing through the quiet office. A few nearby employees glanced up. Some chuckled. "Why don't you clean that up, kid? That's what you're here for, right?" I looked down at the coffee puddle, then met his eyes. Part of me wanted to throw the mop down and tell him to clean it himself, but I didn't. Not because I was scared, but because I knew he was baiting me, waiting for me to snap. Instead, I nodded, grabbed a rag from my cart, and knelt to wipe the floor. "Good boy," Nathan said, like he was training a dog. "Hurry it up. I don't have all day to wait on you." He turned away, leaving the snickers of a few sycophants echoing behind him. I kept wiping, but in my head, I was cataloging every detail. His tone, the way he looked at me, the reactions of everyone around. Some averted their eyes, as if ashamed to witness it. But one guy didn't. David Lawson, standing at the far end of the office, watched Nathan with a cold stare. He didn't say a word, but the way he gripped his coffee mug said plenty. Nathan didn't stop at stunts like that. He started spreading rumors, venomous whispers I only caught in fragments from break room chatter. That new janitor's lazy as hell. I overheard one of Nathan's buddies, a guy named Greg from finance, telling someone else, "Heard he broke the photocopier the other day." Total bullshit. I'd never touched the photocopier, but Nathan knew words had power. He wanted the whole office to see me as a screw-up, a guy not worth respecting. But it wasn't the bullying that really got my attention. It was the moments I overheard. The conversations not meant for my ears. One afternoon, as I was cleaning a conference room after an all-hands meeting, Nathan and Greg stayed behind to talk. They didn't notice me, tucked behind the whiteboard. "Don't worry about that expense line," Nathan said, his voice low but confident. "I've taken care of it. Nobody's gonna dig into it." Greg let out a nervous laugh. "You sure? If someone audits the numbers, we're reg." Nathan cut him off. "I know how to make it look clean. Stick with me, and you'll get your cut." They left soon after, but those words stuck with me. Taken care of. Your cut? I wasn't a finance expert, but I'd learned enough in business school to know talk like that wasn't innocent. Carter Technologies was a big player, with millions of dollars flowing through its accounts every day. If Nathan was pulling something shady, it wasn't just personal. It threatened everything my dad had built. I started paying closer attention. I wasn't just cleaning anymore. I was watching. Every time I emptied Nathan's trash, I glanced at the scraps of paper on his desk, the emails left open on his computer. When he stepped away, I didn't touch anything, but I memorized what I saw. And I started carrying an old burner phone, tucked in my jumpsuit pocket, to record anything suspicious I overheard. One evening, while I was wiping down the break room, David Lawson walked in. He looked at me, then glanced down the hall to make sure no one was listening. "You holding up okay with Nathan's crap?" he asked, his voice low but genuine. I paused, wiping my hands on my jumpsuit. "I'm fine, just doing my job." David nodded, but his eyes stayed on me. "I know what kind of guy Nathan is. He doesn't just pick on you because you're new. He does it to anyone he thinks can't push back." I didn't say anything, but I felt the sincerity in his words. David wasn't like the others here. He had an integrity I rarely saw, like he'd faced guys like Nathan before, and knew the cost of staying quiet. "Thanks," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "But I can handle it." David gave a faint smile. "I believe you. But if you need someone to have your back, just say the word." Offer caught me off guard. In a place where most people turned away, or laughed along with Nathan, David was the first to make me feel like I wasn't alone. But I couldn't spill my plan, not yet. I just nodded, and went back to work. The real clash came at an all-hands meeting the next week. The big conference room, with its glass walls overlooking the Chicago River, was packed. I was assigned to clean up after it wrapped, but Nathan had other plans. As everyone was discussing the quarterly financials, he suddenly pointed at me, standing in the corner with my car. "Hey, janitor," he called out, loud enough to silence the room. "You ever heard of working on time? The floor in here looks like a dump. You planning to let us meet in this mess?" Every head turned to me. Heat crept up my neck, but I kept my gaze steady. The floor was spotless. I'd mopped it that morning. He just wanted to humiliate me, to make the whole company see me as a failure. "I'll double-check it, sir," I said, my voice even but firm. Nathan laughed, like he'd just won a chess match. "You'd better. We're not paying you to stand around looking pretty." A few people chuckled, but I noticed not everyone was amused. David Lawson, seated at the far end of the table, stared at Nathan with icy eyes. Another employee, an older woman named Margaret from HR, shook her head slightly, like she'd seen this show too many times. After the meeting, Nathan wasn't done. He called me into his office and slapped another ridiculous task on me. "Reorganize the entire storage room in the basement. Hundreds of boxes of old files in 2 days. This is your shot to prove you're not useless," he said, that venomous smile spreading across his face. "Or you gonna tell me you can't even handle moving boxes?" I looked at him, the cold resolve in my chest growing stronger. "I'll get it done, sir." He laughed, but this time, I caught a flicker of unease in his eyes. Maybe he was starting to realize I wasn't as easy to break as he thought. As I left his office, I touched my mom's watch. The second hand kept ticking, steady and relentless. They think I don't notice, I thought, but I see it all, and I'm not letting them off the hook. I knew I was on the right track. The scraps of evidence I'd been collecting, those recordings, the shady emails, the numbers that didn't add up, were starting to form a picture. Nathan Brooks might think he was untouchable, but he didn't know that every word, every move, was bringing him closer to the day he'd have to pay. After weeks of being Nathan Brooks's punching bag, I learned one thing to take down a guy like him. I couldn't let my emotions call the shots. He wanted me to explode, to lose my cool so he'd have an excuse to shove me out of the game. But I didn't give him that excuse. Every time he hurled an insult, every time he tried to humiliate me in front of the office, I just touched my mom's watch and told myself, "Stay patient, Ethan. The truth will speak for you." I started building a plan, not with loud moves, but with careful, calculated steps. The scraps of evidence I'd already gathered, the recording of Nathan's chat with Greg, the emails left open on his computer, were just the beginning. I knew I needed more. Something ironclad, numbers and documents that would leave Nathan with no way to wiggle out. But I also knew I couldn't do it alone. In a place like Carter Technologies, where loyalty sways with power and perks, I needed allies, and the first person who came to mind was David Lawson. David wasn't just a senior employee, he was a former Marine, a guy who knew the cost of standing up to injustice. I'd seen the way he looked at Nathan, not with fear or flattery, but with cold contempt. But I couldn't approach him carelessly. If I revealed my true identity, that I was Robert Carter's son, I'd lose the one advantage I had, invisibility. As a janitor, I could move through the office, overhear conversations no one wanted me to hear, see things no one wanted me to see. The trade-off was enduring Nathan's games, day after day. One evening, after my shift, I stayed late to clean the big conference room. The lights of Willis Tower sparkled through the windows, reflecting off the Chicago River below. I pulled out my old burner phone, checking the recording I'd saved the day before. It was a short exchange between Nathan and Greg, about adjusting a large expense in the financial reports. The audio wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough to catch Nathan's smug tone. "Nobody's gonna check. I've got it covered." I saved the recording to a small USB drive, tucking it deep in my jumpsuit pocket. But I knew I needed more than that. I needed documents, contracts, invoices, anything that could prove Nathan was skimming money or covering up fraud. And to get that, I needed access to his office when he wasn't around. The chance came one afternoon, when Nathan left for a lunch meeting with other execs. I pushed my cleaning cart into his office, pretending to empty the trash as usual. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face blank. His computer was still on, an email from Greg open on the screen. I didn't touch the keyboard, too risky, but I snapped a quick photo with my phone. The email mentioned an off-the-books payment to a vendor I'd never heard of. I didn't know exactly what it meant, but I knew it wasn't legit. As I was emptying the trash, another employee walked in. Margaret, the older woman from HR, I'd seen at the all-hands meeting. She stopped, eyeing me with a look that wasn't quite suspicion, but wasn't friendly either. "You're working late," she said, her tone neutral. "Just trying to get the job done, ma'am," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Margaret nodded, but her gaze lingered. "Be careful around Nathan. He doesn't like people poking through his stuff." Her words jolted me, but I stayed cool. "Just taking out the trash, ma'am." She gave a faint smile and walked away. I wasn't sure if she was warning me, or just making small talk, but I knew I had to be more cautious. Margaret might not be an ally, but she wasn't an enemy either. If I played my cards right, she could be useful. That night, I met David Lawson at the bar in the Loop, my usual spot for thinking. I picked a quiet corner, away from the lights, and ordered a beer. David walked in, still in his office suit, but looking more relaxed than he did at work. He sat across from me, saying nothing for a few seconds. "You wanted to talk," he said, cutting to the chase. "About Nathan, right?" I nodded, choosing my words carefully. "You said if I needed someone to have my back, to say so. I think now's the time." David raised an eyebrow, but didn't interrupt. I told him what I'd heard, not everything, but enough to get the point across. The shady conversations, the numbers that didn't add up, the suspicious emails. I didn't mention my real identity, just said I believed Nathan was doing something that could hurt the company. David listened, his face giving nothing away. When I finished, he took a sip of his beer and looked me dead in the eye. "You've got guts," he said, "but Nathan's not some lightweight. He's got people backing him, and if you're wrong, he'll crush you." "I'm not wrong," I said, my voice firm, "and I'm not making a move until I've got rock-solid proof." David nodded slowly. "Good. If you need me, I'm in, but you've got to play it smart. One wrong step, and you're done." His words were a warning, but also a promise. I knew David wasn't the type to trust easily, but he'd chosen to stand with me. That was the first step. Over the next few days, I worked more carefully. I coordinated with David to keep tabs on Nathan, not like some spy movie, but by sharing information. David had access to some internal systems and agreed to dig into the financial reports Nathan had handled. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence. A handwritten note from Nathan's trash, another email I snapped a photo of, and one more recording from the break room, where Nathan bragged about tweaking the numbers to keep things smooth. But staying calm wasn't always easy. There were moments I wanted to march into my dad's office, tell him who I was, and end this charade. Every time Nathan humiliated me, every time I heard the snickers of his cronies, the anger flared. But then I'd touch the watch, hear its steady tick, and remember my mom's word. Integrity is doing the right thing, even when it's hard. I couldn't quit, not for me, but for my dad, for the company he'd built, and for people like David, who deserved to work in a place that was fair. "They think I don't notice," I muttered, standing alone in the empty office, one late night. "But I see it all, and I'm gonna make them pay." The watch on my wrist kept ticking, each second a step closer to the day the truth would come out. The day of reckoning finally came. The air in the Carter Technologies office that morning felt heavy, like everyone could sense a storm brewing, even if they didn't know what it was. The quarterly all-hands meeting was held in the big conference room, its glass walls overlooking the Chicago River shimmering in the sunlight. Every seat was filled, from top execs to rank-and-file employees. I stood in the corner, as usual, my cleaning cart beside me, pretending to check the floor. But today, I wasn't the anonymous janitor. Today, I was Ethan Carter, son of Robert Carter, and I was ready to make Nathan Brooks pay. In the days leading up to the meeting, David Lawson and I had worked non-stop. David dug into the financial reports Nathan had handled, uncovering irregular expenses, millions of dollars funneled to shell companies that existed only on paper. Meanwhile, I'd compiled all my evidence. The recording of Nathan bragging about tweaking the numbers, emails between him and Greg about off-the-books payments, and a stack of documents I'd photographed in his office, showing shady transactions. I'd handed everything to my dad, who quietly coordinated with the company's legal team to prepare for this moment. As the meeting began, my dad, Robert Carter, stood at the head of the table, his voice carrying that familiar authority. "Today is a pivotal day," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "I'm nearing retirement, and I've chosen my successor. But first we need to address a serious issue within this company." The room buzzed with murmurs. Nathan, sitting near the front, flashed a smug grin, like he was certain his name was about to be called. He glanced at me, still in the corner, and smirked. "What are you still doing here, kid?" he whispered, loud enough for a few nearby people to hear. "This is a meeting for important folks. Go mop the floor." I didn't respond. I just locked eyes with him, my stare cold. He had no idea his game was over. My dad continued. "For the past few months we've been conducting an internal investigation, and the person leading that investigation is no stranger." He paused, looking at me. "Ethan, come up here." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me as I stepped away from the corner, leaving my cart behind. I heard whispers, chairs shifting, but I didn't look at anyone except Nathan. His grin froze, then melted away as I stood beside my dad. "This is Ethan Carter," my dad said, his voice steady but sharp. "My son. For the past few months he's been working undercover as a janitor to observe this company from the ground up, and what he's uncovered is deeply alarming." Nathan's face went pale. He gripped the table's edge, like he was trying to keep himself from collapsing. What's going on here?" he stammered. But no one paid him any mind. All eyes were on me. I took a deep breath, touching my mom's watch for calm. "I didn't come here to be a janitor," I said, my voice clear, ringing through the room. "I came here to see the truth. And the truth is, this company is being undermined from within, by people like Nathan Brooks." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Nathan shot to his feet, his voice shaky but trying to sound confident. "This is a misunderstanding. He's just a janitor. How the hell does he know anything about?" "Sit down, Nathan," my dad cut in, his voice like a blade. Nathan sank back into his chair, sweat beading on his forehead. I went on. "For months I've been gathering evidence. Recordings, emails, documents, all showing that Nathan Brooks and a few others have been embezzling millions of dollars from this company through fake transactions and shell vendors." I held up a USB drive. "It's all here, and the company's legal team has verified its authenticity." I plugged the USB into the projector. A slide popped up, displaying an email between Nathan and Greg, the phrase "off the books payment" highlighted in bold. Next came the recording. Nathan's voice crystal clear. "Nobody's gonna check. I've got it covered." The room went dead silent. Some people bowed their heads, as if ashamed for ever laughing along with Nathan. Nathan leapt up again, his face beet red. "This is fabricated. He's framing me to smear my name. I've given everything to this company." "Enough," my dad said. He turned to two security guards at the door. "Escort Mr. Brooks out. Effective immediately. He's fired." Nathan staggered, like he'd been punched. "Mr. Carter, please hear me out. My family, I've got kids. You should have thought of them before you decided to gut this company for your own greed," my dad replied, his voice ice cold. Security stepped forward, grabbing Nathan's arms. He thrashed, shouting, You bastard, you ruined me." But I just looked at him, silent. He'd ruined himself. I'd only flipped on the light. As Nathan was dragged out, the room stayed quiet. My dad turned back, his tone softer but still commanding. "Behavior like Nathan Brooks has no place at Carter Technologies. But today we also saw those who chose integrity." He looked at David Lawson, sitting upright, his eyes steady. "David, thank you for assisting Ethan and providing critical information." David nodded, saying nothing, but I saw a flicker of pride in his eye. My dad also mentioned Margaret, who'd quietly reported Nathan's odd behavior to HR. She gave a small smile, like she was relieved the truth was finally out. Finally my dad turned to me. "Ethan, I'm proud of you. You endured things no one should have to, but you never lost your dignity. You've proven you're ready to lead this company." He paused, addressing the room. "Ethan Carter will be the next CEO of Carter Technologies. I expect you to respect him, as you would any leader." The room broke into applause, but I barely heard it over the ticking of the watch on my wrist. I'd done it, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted justice. I touched the watch, thinking of my mom, my dad, and what I'd learned. They thought I wouldn't notice, but I saw it all, and now they're facing the truth. After the day Nathan Brooks was hauled out of the conference room, the atmosphere at Carter Technologies shifted. The heavy shadow of fear and injustice that once hung over the cubicles and gleaming hallways lifted. The office, perched in the heart of Chicago with views of the Chicago River, felt like it had been bathed in new light. But for me, the victory wasn't about Nathan's firing or being named CEO. The victory was knowing I'd done the right thing. Not out of anger, but with the integrity my mom had taught me. In the days following the meeting, news about Nathan spread like wildfire. He didn't just lose his job. The company's legal team, working with authorities, launched a criminal investigation based on the evidence I'd provided. Millions of dollars embezzled, fake transactions, shell vendors, it all came to light. Nathan's name hit the business pages, not as a hotshot manager, but as a fraud who'd stolen from the very company he'd bragged about running. He lost everything, his reputation, his career, and maybe even his freedom, as the charges started piling up. But I didn't take joy in his downfall. I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to rebuild, to make sure Carter Technologies, my dad's legacy, became a place where everyone, from execs to janitors, was treated fairly. On my first day as CEO, I stood in my dad's old office, looking out at the twinkling Willis Tower in the distance. My mom's watch was still on my wrist, its second hand ticking steady, a reminder, do what's right, Ethan, even when it's hard. I called an all-hands meeting the next week, not to flex my win, but to lay the groundwork for the future. The big conference room was packed, but this time, there was no tension or fear. I stood at the head of the table, not in some flashy suit, just a simple business outfit, and started speaking. Carter Technologies has been through a dark time, I said, my eyes scanning the room. But today, I want to talk about the future. This company will be built on 3 principles: justice, respect, and integrity. If you work hard, you'll be recognized. If you abuse your power, you'll pay the price. It's that simple. The room nodded, some people clapping. I spotted David Lawson in the middle, his steady gaze as always. Margaret, from HR, gave a small smile, like she knew the company was finally on the right track. We need real leaders, I went on. People who don't just do their job well, but do the right thing when no one's watching. I turned to David. David Lawson, you've proven that. For your integrity and support, I'm naming you the new Chief Operating Officer. The room burst into applause. David stood, nodding at me, his voice low but heartfelt. Thank you, Ethan. I won't let you down. I also recognized Margaret, who'd quietly reported Nathan's shady behavior. Margaret, your courage helped us uncover the truth. You'll lead a new initiative to improve our workplace culture, making sure every employee has a voice. Margaret smiled, her eyes shining with pride. I'm honored, she said, her voice soft but firm. In the weeks that followed, I started delivering on my promises. I rolled out new policies, transparent financial reporting processes, an anonymous hotline for employees to report misconduct, and training sessions on workplace ethics. The office, once a hotbed of competition and fear, felt more open. Employees started greeting me by my first name, not Mr. Carter, but Ethan. And I liked that. It reminded me that CEO or not, I was part of this team, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. The CEO gig came with heavy pressure, endless meetings, decisions impacting hundreds of employees, and the responsibility of upholding my dad's legacy. Some nights, I sat alone in my office, staring out at the Chicago River, wondering if I was up to the task. But then I'd touch my mom's watch, hear its steady tick, and remember what she'd said. Integrity isn't the easy road, but it's the only one worth taking. My victory wasn't about taking down Nathan Brooks. It was about proving that integrity, the kind my mom and dad instilled in me, still mattered, even in a world full of ambition and deceit. They thought I wouldn't notice, I muttered, looking out at Chicago's glittering skyline. But I saw it all, and I chose to do what's right. Carter Technologies is a better place now, not because of me, but because of people like David, Margaret, and dozens of other employees who chose to stand up for justice. Some might call my approach old-fashioned. I just call it integrity. And as I leave the office each day, my mom's watch on my wrist, I know I'm on the right track, not just for myself, but for everyone who believes justice always wins. One evening, a few months after I officially became CEO of Carter Technologies, I stood alone on the banks of the Chicago River. A cold breeze swept through, carrying the mist off Lake Michigan, making the lights of Willis Tower shimmer like stars on the water. This city, with its bustling streets, towering skyscrapers, and relentless pulse, has always been my home. But tonight it felt different, like it was whispering to me about what I'd been through and what I'd learned. I touched my mom's watch, feeling the steady tick of the second hand under its scratched glass face. This watch had been with me through it all. The days Nathan Brooks humiliated me, the late nights gathering evidence, and the moment I stood before the company to expose the truth. It wasn't just some old keepsake. It was a reminder of my mom, of the values she passed down: integrity, justice, and the patience to do what's right, even when the path is rough. Looking back on my journey, I realized it wasn't just about taking down Nathan or saving my dad's company. It was about proving that, in a world full of ambition and deceit, there's still room for integrity. I chose the hard road, posing as a janitor, enduring insults, and quietly building my case. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I believed the truth always finds a way to shine. And shine it did, not through shouting matches, but through undeniable evidence, through the support of people like David Lawson and Margaret, and through my loyalty to my family's legacy. I thought about my dad, who'd put his faith in me from the start. He didn't want me to just be an heir. He wanted me to be a leader, someone who understood the value of hard work and justice. I thought about David, who stood up when no one else would, and Margaret, who quietly did the right thing despite the risks. They, along with dozens of other employees at Carter Technologies, are why this company is stronger than ever. The culture of fear is gone, replaced by openness and respect. But I know this journey wasn't mine alone. It belongs to everyone who believes justice always wins, as long as you're willing to fight for it. Standing by the river, I looked down at the watch, its glass catching the glow from the water. I remembered my mom's words in our little suburban Chicago kitchen, where she'd bake bread and talk to me about the world. Some people call integrity old-fashioned, Ethan. I call it strength. Tonight I felt that strength, not in the power of being CEO, but in the peace of knowing I hadn't lost myself. Chicago kept humming along, cars zipping by, lights twinkling, the river flowing on. But in that moment, I found a deep stillness. I'd walked through the dark to find the light, and I'd done it my way. Quietly, steadily, honestly. They thought I wouldn't notice, I murmured, smiling at the river. But I saw it all, and I chose the right path. I turned and walked away from the riverbank, leaving Chicago's glow behind. The watch on my wrist kept ticking, each beat a promise that I'd keep living by the values that guided me: justice, integrity, and loyalty to the people I love. This journey may be over, but the story of doing what's right, no matter how hard, will always go on. Thank you all for sticking with me through this story. I hope it's inspired you to stand up for justice, wherever you are in life. If you enjoyed this tale, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what's next. Let's keep sharing stories of integrity and triumph, because as I've learned, the truth is always worth fighting for.